Let me welcome you to the third study of the book of ESTHER that we shall address from the premise of the historic territorial vanity and focusing on the victims of this vanity spree. Let us pray. Our God and our Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, we visit your presence and the power of your magnanimity to impulse us into divine inspiration, divine discussion, divine recording, divine transmission, that your kingdom may expand through us. And we trust and thank you. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord and our Savior. Amen. I'll just quickly read 11 verses from verse 10 to 22, about 13 verses thereof. On the 17th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded the 7 chamberlains to bring Queen Vashti before the king with her royal crown, in order to show the peoples and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, conveyed by the eunuchs. And at this the king was enraged, and his anger burned within him. Then the king said to the wise men who knew the times, for this was the king's procedure towards all who were versed in law and judgment. And the next men to him being Kashana, Shatan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdom, according to the law, what is to be done to Queen Vashti, because she had not performed the king's command, conveyed by the eunuchs. Then Memucan said in the presence of the king and the princes, not only to the king had Vashti done wrong, but also to all the princes and all the peoples who are in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen will be made known to all women, causing them to look with contempt upon their husbands, since they will say, King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, and she did not come. This very day, the ladies of Persia and Media, who have heard the queen's behavior, will be telling it to the king's princes, and there will be contempt and wrath in plenty. If it pleases the king, let a royal order go forth from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and Medes, so that it may not be altered, that Vashti is to come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give a royal position to another who is better than she. So the decree made by the king is, so when the decree made by the king is proclaimed throughout all the kingdom, vast as it is, all women will give honor to their husbands, high and low. This advice pleased the king and the princes, and the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to every province in his own scripts, and to every people in his own language, that every man be lord in his own house, and speak according to the language of his people. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Victims of the Vanity Fair. It was historic, and the territory was the entire Middle East, as it's known today, even including Israel that was in captivity. And when you are talking about vanity, we are talking about too much pride in one's personal appearance or accomplishment. Yes, I did it, I dealt. It was an exhibition. That's what makes it a fair. It was vanity spree. That spree simply referred to a period of heavy, unrestricted, or fun and frolic. It was in the public glare. And a victim is somebody who suffers as a result of somebody else's action. You know, the impact of a 6 months continuous banquet definitely took its toll on the societal values. For one reason, those who made the laws, they were bankrupt of their own. Their eagle's eyes only legislated to protect their own domestic impact of the king's excesses. And the worst hits were the women folk who had no input in the legislation. That's the king drinking in public. If alcohol bites like the serpent, the first victim that manifested the sting was a man who had the scepter. That was the king. Scripture says on the 7th day, when king attacked Xerxes, when he was in high spirits from wine, that is, he was tipsy, when you want to put it, he was at the beginning of the stages of drunkenness. He commanded the 7 eunuchs by name, advertised. What did he say? The remaining is history. But let's come back to the focus on alcohol in the Bible. If alcohol bites like the serpents, the first victim that it stung was the king, the man who had the scepter. You can see well animated, well put into graphics. Proverbs said it. Do not look at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. At the last, it bites like a serpent and stings like a viper. So that viper is already stinging the man who held the scepter, who did not let go cups of wine. And this is a trophy wine that was a second victim, because the king's action caused him a public dishonor in spite of his celebrated wealth that had been on for the past 6 months and over. When the attendants delivered the king's command, we are told Queen Vashti refused to come. That's public disgrace. Then the king became furious and he burned with anger. Verse 22 talks about the repercussion of it, the ripples of it. He sent dispatches to all parts of the kingdom, to each province his own scripts, to each people in his own language, proclaiming in each people's tongue that every man should be ruler in his own house. There's an adage of Southwest program in Yoruba. It is with anger, fury, that a man will raise up the axe. It is with shame he has to put to practice his threats. It was public disgrace, he had no choice. And his marital home without rehearsal tore apart in his third year of a 21-year tenure. If you were married to Esther subsequently for 14 years, Vashti was in marriage for 7 years. That means their marriage had been on before he became king. And you know the typical unrehearsed familiarity between husband and wife. Oh, this one has come again. After being king of the whole world, it was a different matter. So his marriage or his marital home without rehearsal tore apart in the third year of his reign. Like a surgical division, it was done for him by his appointed guests. Because we're told when the attendants came back, when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come. So there is no panel beating of the message and reactions and reaction, and king became furious. When you are under the camera, when you're under the glare, when you are on the stage of public domain, You carry everything you have with it. That's not the time to drink wine. So the king said to the wise men, which knew the times, that was his habits, of those who surrounded him, advisors and the chief judge, His Excellency, they've been at the bar for 6 months. It was the entire, what you now call, in the political language, executive council was beside him, so he did not need to send for anybody. Memucan was one of the 7 vice regents of the Persian King Empire. Smart man. We were told, then Memucan replied in the presence of the king and the nobles. It was like like an instant summon. Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the peoples of all the provinces, the entire Middle Belt, the entire Middle East. And if it pleases the king, the man continued, let a royal edict be issued by him. Let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media so that it cannot be repealed, that Vashti may no longer come into the presence of the king Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is more worthy than she. Everything was on stage. The marriage was torn apart on stage like a dream you never ever expect will come true on the spot. And we're told the king and his nobles were pleased with this advice. The king was still tipsy, so the king did as Memucan proposed. No going back. And to put it in graphics, let the king give a royal position to another who is more worthy than she. What was supposed to be a stage pride in the vanity spree became a stage humiliation for His Excellency. You know, after the wine was gone, the king nursed the wound of the broken home alone in his own privacy. These 2 pairs, shall I say, of photographs will say it all. Proverbs, when the king was high, said about the man who is drunk, they have struck me, but I was not hurt. They have beaten me, but I did not feel it. When shall I awake that I may seek another drink? That's the way it is when people are high. Those who don't come back home in time, they want to forget about their shame. They are always high with wine. That is what Proverbs has suggested and described of their mental states. But when the wine was off, the Bible says, after these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti. Wow. That is the wife of his youth. He remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against her. You can see the 2 countenances. When he was high, he had a cheerful face. When he became sober, he had to nurse the wound in the privacy. Like this giraffe is depicting the high and low. He could see, the man could see the entire terrain in the glimpse of a sober reflection, but it was too late. That's still the viper stinging through the wine. With these things, social values suffer devaluation. With that drunkenness of the king, whether light or heavy, social values suffer devaluation in the empire that enthroned alcohol in the monarchy. All these decorations, all these advertisements, all this 6 months splendor, all the golden couches, all the hangings, they suffered devaluation in the anticlimax of the 6 months of 197 rejoicing. Because the Bible describes it in a couple of verses, Esther 1, 6 and 7. There were hangings of white cloth, of green and blue, fasting with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble. The couches were of gold and silver. You can imagine a couch of gold, a pavement of red and wine and yellow and black marble. All the beauty that and elegance that were advertised had been devalued by the stink of wine through the king. And if you can only, be reminded, wine was served in goblets of gold, each one different from the other. And the royal wine was abundant in keeping with the king's liberality. Just give it all. You could see all sorts of, they have different names, rum, and so on and so forth, in golden vessels. That viper devalued the entire 187 rejoicing. And of importance, thirdly, in the downward slope of values were equity. Because when you are talking about Esther chapter 3, verse 9 and 10, if it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them. That was Haman. When Haman too was tipsy with wine, equity and fairness were under the carpet. Both of them were drinking. And Haman was telling the king how to deal with the Jews. Let a decree be issued to destroy them. And I will put 10,000 talents of silver in the royal treasury for the men who carry out this business. There was no equity, there was no fairness when Haman and the king drank together. And the seal, which you only put in a safe, was in the king's hand, like a ring. The king took the signet from his finger and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. With high spirit of wine, you could do anything. A commander-in-chief will not give command to trigger off, the terrible nuclear bomb that we are all fearing into the hand of people. The commander must not be somebody who drinks in the morning, night, and day. So of importance in the downslope of the values, the morality suffered a lot. You could see our royal excellency, our royal Vashti, being aroused by 7 eunuchs, because the king commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him. They were by name: Mehuman, Biztha, Abona, Bigtha, Abagtha, and so on. The queen was devalued by these 7 hefty men who were harmless sexually to her. She became a victim. So morality was thrown on board. That was beautiful Vashti. When they were to read that she come no more, those 7 eunuchs too were the ones to come back to her. They were sent to bring before the king with a royal crown. You are surrounded by 7 hefty men, and she too called off the bluff. Come and be paraded. So morality was thrown to the winds. Thirdly, of importance in the downward slope of values were accountability for public property. Imagine, the Bible says, now Haman, there's a mistake here that I will correct here. Yes, of importance in the downward slope. How can you be the principal signatory that will let out the National Central Bank, and you are holding a royal feast for more than half a year? In the year of his reign, the queen gave the banquet, displayed the riches of his royalty and the splendor of his great majesty, 180 days. And we're told when the days were completed, he gave a banquet for another 7 days for everybody, not just the executive. In the last 7 days to make 187 for everybody in the city capital. How do you spend public money that way? So there was downward slope of values. There was no accountability. Everything went with the mood of king. The emphasis was not on integrity this time, it was on beauty. The king wanted everybody to see how beautiful his wife was. Period. When his spirit was high, go and bring Vashti. Now, the women who held office, because we are talking about victims of the spree, the women who had an office, there was no rights to consultation before reaction. They were the worst hit. There was no right for the women. There was no consultation. You just do as you're told. So we are told Vashti, the queen, made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to the king. Although she was in the palace, she had no property. She had no property rights. Everything belonged to the queen. To the king, she was just a furniture. The women had office, but no rights. And when the party was going on, she was summoned through the eunuchs to bring Vashti, the queen, before the king. Not just the way which she wanted, with a royal crown, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for you was fair to look up. If the king did not say it, nobody would know it. And when you are in the first stage of drunkenness, all inhibition is gone. You say it the way you think it, you say it the way you see it, whether it's embarrassing or not. That was the mood of the king. But we're told, typical of women, to show that they have a right, but Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command. And at this, the king was enraged, and his anger burned within him. If you are married to a man in office, be tactful before you both get back home. They had an office, but no right of consultation. When we're talking about the victims of the spree. And what is chapter 1, verse 15? They were now being, the decision was now being made in the absence. What shall we do unto the Queen Vashti? What shall we do to this woman according to the law? Because you have not performed the commandment of King Ahasuerus by the chamberlains. What do we do to her? How do we deal with her? There was evidence too of widespread feminine enslavement coded under domestic sanity. They said our conduct will become known all over to all the women. The Middle East party was on for 6 months. Everybody, it was in the public layer. And so they would despise their husband. If you could do this, Your Excellency, we are in trouble. And say King Xerxes commanded Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. They were being tactful to defend their own private authority. And they said, this very day, the Persian and the Medes women of nobility who have heard about the queen's conduct will respond to all the king's nobles in the same way. There will be no end to disrespect and discord. So the women that were the victims of enslavement under the code of domestic sanity. And when you now see in verse 20, and he said, when the king's decree, which he shall make, that's the one portrayed in his photograph, the edict, when this edict will have been signed and published through his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husband honor, both great and small. This, we are talking about victims of the vanity spree. You can see this photograph, King's Harem. That's the name given to it. They are put in a big house to see the king one by one. It's called the harem. It's part of the enslavement and the tradition for the king that was Esther got through. And in the harem, when the king is in privacy in the harem, you can see how all of them will be competing for attention and contact. You see, when the powder masquerade thing is removed, the harem, the king, became like a drone, being persuaded by every queen to. There was something similar with Jacob between Leah and Rachel. There was evidence of widespread feminine enslavement, quoted by domestic society. They all belong to the king and they are to be kept exclusive, looked after by eunuchs. There was not a joke in America in 1887, Somebody were told in 1887, a group of men added a woman's name, Susanna Salter, to a mayoral ballot as a joke intended to humiliate women, but they got the shocker of their life. Instead, she won over 60% of the votes and became the first female mayor. This unwritten down harassment and what shall we say, victimization of women have been long in the annals, in the practice of creation. Let's see how we can overcome this type of things. The only way to overcome it, like the Bible says, blessed is a nation whose God is the Lord. When you subscribe to Psalm 33, verse 12, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And the only way to be blessed is to entrench the fear of God in our outfits. Amos says in chapter 5, verse 6, seek the Lord and you will live, lest it break out like fire in the house of Joseph, and there be none to quench him better. Amos chapter 5 says, you who turn justice into bitterness and cast righteousness to the ground. Godliness. Now let's summarize before we start discussing. I haven't spoken for about half an hour. In 30 minutes time, let's summarize the victims of the spree and what happened. The first victim was Vashti. She lost her marriage, she lost her crown, she lost her life, because we were told eventually that woman was assassinated on the king's instruction. The second victim is the king. He lost his head from wine, he lost his wife of his youth, he lost his privacy. He went into 4 years unbridled harlotry to get a new wife, and thereafter went into reckless adultery protected by the law. How do I mean? The queen may not survive if she comes to the throne to look for the husband without being sent for. The third victim was Esther. She was a prisoner of fortune who may not die, a prisoner of fortune who may die probing into her husband's affairs. Esther said in chapter 8, verse 9 to 14, I myself have not been called to the kings these 30 days. You could see her told you they were married in the office. She was just a decoration. I've not been called to come and see the king in the past 30 days. God help you. You ask her ask what he has been doing. Of course, the fourth victim, the uncountable. They were the chamberlains, the eunuchs. They were castrated men to look after the king's wives and other concubines. They were in a life sentence of devaluation. The eunuch is an officer which Oriental monarchs placed over their harems. And when the king wanted Vashti to be brought, he sent 7 of them to bring Queen Vashti to the king with a royal crown in order to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look up. Let's see the next. The entire provinces under the king's administration was next. Because Mammon reigned. Mammon is a demon. Is a biblical name for riches, often used to describe the basic influence of material wealth. That is a symbol in one of the areas where it's worshipped. It's a demon with a scepter, with something in his hand. And we're told in those days, the king showed his splendor for 184 days. Mammon reigned. So the entire provinces, they were victim of the supremacy of Mammon. The next, the entire nation and jurisdiction. Esther is a book where there is no mention of God. So nobody talks about God. The king is the God. When Nebuchadnezzar was in charge, he was their God. Next, it's still the entire nation under alcohol. Whatever the mood of the priest or the king is, that is the way it was to be. See the Middle East as it's known today. Turkey, USSR, Asinari, Tehran, Iran, Baghdad, Iraq. So the entire Middle East of today was the 127, and even the North Africa, Saudi Arabia is part of the Middle East, Egypt, Sudan, those were parts up to Ethiopia. They were under the groan and what I would call the suppression. You could see one of the ministers in that photograph, Haman. He was just coming. Every head was bowed except that of Mordecai. If you are talking about USSR and Ukraine, the man sitting with his head up is Ukraine. The man is wondering why everybody is not bowing, will be probably Putin. The entire Persian Empire was under the groan of this spree, and it was a Vanity Fair. We are told when the king honored Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a great honor, that was the way he would pass. That is where everybody should bow. And God help you, he did not. Mordecai's advance will have sacrificed the lives of thousands of Jews. So when we are talking about the summary of those who eventually Haman was one of those who were hanged because he was made to be hanged in his gallows. So the power drunkenness, the wine and everything eventually took its toll. Let's come back to other victims. Still talking about the entire nation under alcohol, the Bible says, woe to you, O land, when your king is a child, and your princes feasts in the morning. The king was at the mercy of bribery and corruption, Esther 3:9. Haman was telling the king, if it pleases the king, let it be decreed that the Jews be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents just to as a workmanship for those who carry out the things. The Jews too, they were victims. Because when the king was under alcohol, the king was the Supreme Court. He just removed his ring. You can see that signet ring. He took the signet ring from his son and gave it to Haman. For he was the enemy of Jews, go and carry it out. They were both drinking. Who were the victims? Of course, everybody. Everybody in the sense that when the Jews were vindicated, there was no forgiveness. The plot for genocide to exterminate the Jews did not succeed. The Jews attempted themselves in all the cities and provinces, and they too killed 5,000 people, including Haman's 10 sons, as a revenge. Everybody was a victim of ripples of actions and reactions of vanity spree. The 10th, it may not be the 14th, the way I numbered it, of the victims, uncountable virgins. Over 4 years, they were taken to the palace when the king wanted to choose a queen. God help you if you refuse. Compare, Moses could only be hidden for 3 months when Pharaoh wanted all children under 2 years to die. There was no hiding place. You are beautiful. You are taken to the palace. It did not matter what your parents think. Of importance are the eunuchs, who will just be taken from their parents, castrated, and they have a service in the palace forever to look after women so that they will not defile them. They were to be kept for the king. Who else were the victims? Of course, King Ahasuerus and Queen Esther. Ahasuerus, from extra biblical history, died at the age of 53. Esther's marriage lasted 14 years when Xerxes won, and we know that he came to the throne 1486 BC, met in some timely and violent death 14 years later as a result of the revelation. What happened to that king? His execution was instigated by one of his own ministers called Artabanus, with a view enabling the son of Vashti to succeed that man. This is the way you see things happen. Let's now, before I stop talking, ask one question to you. Whose victim are you? Somebody says, appearances are often deceptive. And when you spell that often, it was put like a clock. You could be deceived as long as possible. Appearances are often deceiving. And when Olivia said, it's not a shame to be deceived. It is a shame to stay in deception. 1 Timothy even says, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ will be persecuted. 1 Timothy 3:12 and 13. While evildoers and impostors will go from bad to worse, deceiving and being deceived. When you start deceiving people, you get to a situation where you think deception is the only way out. And Jesus Christ warned us in John 8:44, when he described the nature of the devil. He said he was a murderer from the beginning. He does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. Whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a lie and the father of lies. When you are following the devil, it doesn't matter how you follow him, you get deceived. Whose victim are you? Can you see the way this bottle of wine was fitted with chains in the hands of those who drink it? Wine is a mocker. Strong drink is raging, and whoever is deceived thereby is not wise. Proverbs 21. Memory verse. If it pleases the king, let a royal order go forth from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it may not be altered, that Vashti is to come no more before the king Ahasuerus, and let the king give a royal position to another better than she.